thanks to the Interfaith community, which has organized this Sisterhood and Brotherhood breakfast in Bergen County, for hosting this diverse event. And thanks to all of you, the representatives of various religious traditions, for making this event meaningful. I am very cognizant of the fact that we are running late, and I also know it's President's Day, so let me invoke that first. And one of my favorite presidents, the founders of this great nation, is Thomas Jefferson. And to paraphrase him, he said, "It makes absolutely no difference to me whether my neighbor worships one God, three God, or no God." And I think that's the level of work which is cut out for the religious communities. We get way too worked up on what other practitioners are doing, the observers of other religion, whereas really our work is not what the practitioners are doing, rather what they're contributing to the larger community. This nation is not founded on religion per se. To invoke former Secretary of States and the Founding Fathers, and if I intermix what they've been saying about this country, I mean, we are here for a common mission. We came here and intermixed our blood for it, and we defended it from that angle. And interfaith communities need to become the harbingers of this as well. That regardless of who I worship and how I worship in my home or in my houses of worship, my work really is to become contributor to the American fabric. So what does that really mean from a religious tradition? The topic I've chosen is harmony in a world of difference. So one of the first things comes is, there are apparent differences. Let's just recognize them instead of trying to create everyone what Americans used to call a melting pot. There is no melting pot. Then they said there was a salad bowl where everyone sits in a bowl but in their own spaces. Well, we are not, that's not going to work either. We need to become what they call either a symphony or orchestra, where every single sound, every single member creates a beautiful harmony. And that's what I want to talk about. Harmony is a Greek word. It has etymology based out of two ideas. One is to join, and the other is what we harmonize, what we call to combine something together as an agreement or accordance. So joining implies there are separations. There are going to be separations. That's a fundamental sort of a natural phenomena available to us in this cosmos. So recognize the differences. Why are we trying to create these, what we will say American, what does it mean to be American, for example? What does it mean to be American, part of American culture? Every immigrant community, every religious community which has walked into this great nation has contributed in their own way. And I think this is the new work for us. And I'm going to invoke here Martin Luther King Jr. because everyone just commemorated him last month. His work was not about that there will be a president named Barack Obama. That's a milestone. Work is still to be done. And the work is that religious communities need to go back and look at not to judge anyone by their color, as Dr. King implied. And also, we will say today, how they look, outlook in their life. Who are the Negroes, quote unquote, of today's America? Who are the underprivileged in today's America? Where are our civil rights leaders, our religious leaders, talking about the underprivileged today? And that's the dream which has yet to come true. That's the dream I think the religious communities need to take on. Especially if you say you're religious. You don't have an option then. I mean, how you worship, you know what the noises are and all the news are. Before you walk in here, you were probably talking about, who do you think will be the next pope? Or whether you like how Kobe blogged LeBron James yesterday. It's fine. We're going to talk about those things. But our work is, how do we create a city without sorrow? That's what harmony is about. Harmony is not about converting everyone to what you like. Harmony is about working with everyone to create a great society. And that's what I believe in, and that's what I want to focus on. So there are three principles I want to discuss. How do you join things together? How do you combine things together? And the first principle is, we got to stop using the word tolerance. That's so 1960s. Tolerance just means, law requires me to accept you, so I'll accept you. Otherwise, I'm not so sure. Really, the word is acceptance. We need to move towards acceptance, accepting anything which comes and walks our way. And if that means, and I'm going to challenge this committee here as well, because that's sort of my role, I'm unconventional about these things. I mean, there should be a free thinker sitting here, an atheist sitting here. Those who believe Richard Dawkins is their God, invite them too. That's what our work is. It absolutely makes no difference what you believe in, rather acceptance of things. And I think you will see the political will in this nation is moving towards this, but the religious political will is not moving towards this. And this is our work. We don't have to endorse particular lifestyles. If the law is going to require us to accept them today, you better work in your congregations, in your households to figure out that even if we don't endorse particular lifestyle, how do we accept them as fellow human beings? That's the work. Acceptance, not tolerance. Second idea which I want to focus on is, sure, our traditions have, some traditions have idea of conversions, others have, even proselytization in them. But really, preaching is not the answer. And you guys know that, Madonna said that 20 years ago, Papa don't preach. The work is inspiration. Every community, I have worked, I started in the Interfaith work when I was 15 with the Southern Christian Leadership Council in Kansas City. And now I look at, very few people even look at what Southern Poverty Law Center is working on. They're working to reduce poverty in this country and the human rights issues. I'm taking on the hatred, which everyone now talks about, especially in last years of gun violence everywhere. But hatred is being bred in religious places of worship as well. So our work is not religious conversion only, if that's what your tradition says. If it says, go do it. Spread the good news. But real work for religious community is inspiration, inspiring people to take on what the Global Risk Report this year, or December 2012, said are the 5 biggest issues in the world, which includes education and poverty and female empowerment and human rights issues, and what the 99% of the people in New York were talking about last year, economic freedoms. This is the work of religious communities set up liberal institutions, and I studied other traditions as well, throughout their history. But now we are taking a back seat. If you want to really see harmony, while everyone's differences exist, and they will exist, coexistence is the word. So start inspiring your congregations. Yes, they should know what Book of Job says. Yes, they should know how Maulana Rumi has interpreted particular ideas. Yes, they should know what the Baha'i inspiration was, even within the confines of persecutions in Iran. Yes, among the Sikhs, they should know what Guru Nanak had to say, but the most important work is, are you transforming behaviors in your congregations so you can create that just society? If it's only going to be talk, nothing's going to happen. And talk is cheap, I'm doing one here. And the third idea is, reality matters more than abstract stuff. We are too busy talking about abstract stuff. Religious tradition does vary from philosophical tradition in that manner. Religious communities used to take on whatever the issues of the time were. Whereas philosophers created utopias, religious communities transformed communities. Now, I think we want to become philosophers again. I see a lot of religious people talking like philosophers. And I'm not saying that philosophy is a bad thing, it's a different discipline. Even Khalil Gibran shows what a philosopher is up to in his book, The Prophet. I think a religious community deals with what's in front of them, not the abstract. It makes God, if you want to use that word, relevant to them in front of you. You don't wait for Christ to come to you only on a Sunday sermon, for example. Or Allah, or Salam idea, or the peace idea to be sermons in madrasas only. Or in Sikhs for them, in a Gurdwara, or for Jews in the synagogues, or whatever your place of worship is. I think we need to get out of the abstract stuff. We debate too much about, and I'll give you an example. What is abstract stuff? We are more concerned about the label, are you a conservative or a liberal? Do you watch Fixed Noise on Fox News or MSNBC? That's the debate these days. But really, for religious community, the debate needs to be more about how to change that debate. Where it is not about the label, whether you're conservative or a liberal. The debate is about what should really be the immigration policy in 2013 America? If this country is defined by immigrants, we are on the East Coast now, just go visit the museum where Statue of Liberty is. It's about immigration stories. And hear the stories of immigrants who were Irish. Yes, today they might not be the underprivileged community, but at one point they were. This country is about taking on not the abstract stuff. Yes, we're going to debate about it, but more importantly, we need to deal with the reality. The reality is, it's become a very different country. In your congregation, you need to become socially and politically active is what I'm talking about. Yes, not everyone agrees with this, but when I look at the greatest personalities, religious personalities in the world, they were more concerned about realities in front of them, not necessarily where you came from and where you're going to end up. Today, we focus, I'm not saying, if your tradition talks about what heaven or paradise or whatever else we believe in, do talk about it. But what good is talking about the future if we are not doing the carpe diem idea, seize the moment? So we got to seize the immigration debate, religious community needs to play a role in there. There's a health debate, religious community needs to play a debate in. And I'm not saying you become a Republican or a Democrat to do this. I'm saying pick up an element of that debate and see what your religious tradition says about it, and make new political will, new political realities in those areas. So those are the three principles, acceptance, not just tolerance, inspiration, not just preaching, and reality, not just abstract stuff. So those are the principles. Now, how do we apply these principles? Well, I'll just talk about one idea here. Every community, even the Fortune 500 company CEOs talk about being disciplined. So, whether you want to become a marathon runner, and you just notice what happened in South Africa, person who created great history, look at his life was in such a turmoil that there are murders in his own life now. This is what we have created. We are creating exceptional performers, but disharmony within. Whether it is the leakage which just occurred about the next immigration reform, Senator Schumer's, or whether it's a suicide committed by a single head yesterday. There was a news, what are we doing? There's a disharmony within, and they're all disciplined. So I want to talk about what discipline. How do you change your discipline? Disciplines are of two kinds basically. You will do something out of compulsion because your boss asked you to do or because your rabbi asked you to do. That's a compulsion thing. In compulsion, we are more about just meeting the goal. Our goal is to become good Sikh, good Christian. That's what people talk about. Is it really? Do we just want to narrow yourself to that? If discipline is just under compulsion, we also become what I will call, we're only following the letter of the law. I'm getting into the Calvinistic debate now. But really, do you just want to meet the law, or you want to do something more? When people follow the discipline because they have to, because they are prescribed to, then yes, they will get somewhere, but it's not going to create harmony. Now there's another level of discipline where people do it out of love. People who do it out of love, they definitely follow the letter of the law, they'll also follow the spirit of the law. When they do it out of love, there won't be any compulsion. There would be a level of engagement which nobody can describe. This is where he become Walt Whitman. He followed things as well, but he said, do I contradict myself? Well, then I contradict myself because I'm vast. We are asked to become great, grand, vast of human beings. It won't happen if you just follow the discipline and compulsion of your religion. It will happen if you do it out of love. And then instead of fueling the debate with hate, you will be fueling the debate of love. With a capital L. Not just your love or my love, how you love your God or how I love my God. Then the love becomes capital L love, which is actually transcending boundaries, including the national ones. Then we become America how it used to be, not an isolationist, but a contributing member to the world society. So that's the how part. I think become disciplined, but not under compulsion. Nothing's going to happen if you don't do it. It's just, if you do it in a loving manner, then bigger things can happen. That's the difference between it. So what matters then, just towards the end of my unconventional sermon maybe, well then, how do we apply this today? These principles and this idea of discipline. Well, I want to talk about what matters. What matters today is you always have an option. What do you advocate and what do you condemn or what do you oppose? So what are you for and what are you against? We all have these options. And every religious community also faces this because there's a political will of the nation and there's a political will of the priestly class and the political will of the congregants. So it's a full of dilemma. What do you really do? But I think this is where the religious leadership needs to be exercised in a loving manner, not a compulsion manner. And one thing is, we need to start supporting particular ideas. This idea of justice, for example. I mean, justice is not just us. Justice means for anyone and everyone. But usually, communities talk about justice when they themselves are being persecuted, or if they themselves are getting discrimination against. For example, in today's America, really the most underprivileged are the Arab and Muslim men. They are the ones who are under the gun all the time, and by association sometimes by six. But where is the national leadership on this issue? Or where is the national civil rights leadership? And I'm singling that out because this is an issue. Look at the Human Rights Watch report on the rights which are being violated in America. I mean, they write about what's happening in Syria. They also wrote about what happened in India even 2 days ago. But they also write about our homeland. This, the land of the brave, what we need to do here as well. And the other thing to support will be these civil rights campaigns. There's always a debate, civil rights of who? In the 60s the debate was about African Americans. Today it's about homosexuals. I personally might not endorse their lifestyle, but that doesn't mean I don't stand with them to support their civil rights. They're two different things. And we have to start looking at the nuances of the debate rather than the labels of the debate. I know certain religious traditions won't like it, but that's okay. We don't like so many other things. There are so many conflicts in the world. This is not about what I like and don't like. This is about, do I recognize the divinity of every single 7 billionth person on this earth? That's what this is about. If I don't recognize the fellow human being as being divine individuals, then my answers will be compulsion, not born out of love. The other things which I want to talk about is we need to stop this debate on what's sacred and what's profane. Leave that to the Harvards and the Yales of the world. Leave that for the theological seminaries. I'm not saying those are not important. I'm saying they're not necessarily for the religious congregations. People work 40 to 80 hours a week. They come to the congregation, and some of you, all of you, I presume, go to your congregations. What's being told there that matters. They don't have time to read different religious traditions and also your own religious tradition. The leadership there needs to talk about what matters more. So debate is not about what's sacred or profane. Debate is about, do you believe in the dignity and respect of every human being? Figure out how to transfer that. Debate is not about whether somebody is an atheist or a religious person. And let me get on to that as well quickly. Everyone gives, somebody asked me, and here we have labels too, which is fine. This is how we talk about it. And I am a Sikh, I will say, or somebody will say, I'm a Hindu. That's great. That's your part of your identity. I'm a Sikh, I'm a Punjabi, I'm partly South Asian, I'm a US citizen. So I'm not an anthropologist who's going to give a lecture on identity formation here. What I am talking about though is, it's very important to become more religious rather than say what religion you belong to. And there's a huge difference between the two things. Difference is, people say, I belong to this faith, sometimes they don't even know the doctrine and they end up doing something anti-doctrine. Whereas being religious means you are changing your behavior. We say this in common parlance, I work out religiously, which means you are committed to it. Which means that someone else is bench pressing next to you, you don't run away. So become more religious rather than say, I am of this religion. There are two. Your religiousness will tell people who you are, not the label we end up giving to ourselves. I think that's our work. This is how hard, it's tough work. It's like, if you watch a HBO miniseries on John Adams, you'll figure out what it takes to develop America. Well, guess what? We need to redevelop it. We need to redevelop our congregations. And I am saying that anyone who says that they are religious, they don't have an option. We need to fuel the forces of this capital L love idea. We just don't have an option. If we don't feed that level of diversity, then we will show up at annual breakfasts like this one and other interfaith meetings where everyone comes and toots their horn and they go home. Well, that's not going to change anything. The new technology, the new reality is that we are losing our teenagers and adolescents from religious traditions because they see through it. They're like, and they use these words, these hypocrites. That's confronted because they are not able to see a behavior being religious. They see a label of religion. And all congregations are facing this. So let's become more religious, and that's what I'm hoping we'll do. So the responsibility of a developed person, the behavior of a religious person is that they have zero tolerance for racism and sexism. That's where I want to end things. If you still allow that in any capacity, and these are the two biggest enemies worldwide, by the way. You look at the UN's report on 100 million missing women in India and China, and look at corporate policies in this country about women not being allowed equal wages for the same job. It's very much alive. But their outer manifestations are different. They'll be different in the Middle East, and they'll be different in Europe. But they do exist. But we are very quick to point out how the third world is more sexist. Well, Europe went through 2 world wars to figure it out. I hope they don't go through that many wars to figure it out. We all have these behavioral issues. I'm hoping that you will sort of re-evaluate your own ideas of, am I connected to even myself? A disharmonious individual cannot help develop harmony in the community. And as an extension of that, please become white checkers within your own community. Don't accept a joke which is racist or sexist. Don't accept a serious argument for show. And if you yourself cannot contain your community, I don't think we'll be able to forge a just community. So practice love with a capital L idea, so we can make the new sort of a utopian, the 2013 interpretation of what does it mean to be a religious individual to create a great American society. Thank you.